Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from narcissistic relationship. You've all heard about future faking? Let's talk about getting future frozen. And this is something that specifically happens in work. So let's take this on. I have no doubt some of you have gotten future frozen and you don't know about it. So like I said, you thought future faking is bad in the workplace. The future stuff is even worse. It's very specific what I'm about to talk about. But I'm very certain that what I'm about to talk about has happened to more than a few of you. You have a narcissistic boss or supervisor or manager or mentor, someone in that capacity. You work for them. You work hard for them. You're very good at your job. But it's a job or a company or a business or an institution where there are opportunities for advancement. You can get promoted, which may mean if you get these opportunities for advancement, you might get more advanced positions, you might get a salary raise. These changes may mean getting moved to a different division, a different office, even a different region, or certainly a different arm of the organization. But ultimately, it may mean that you do not work for your narcissistic boss anymore. In some cases, you may not have clocked your boss as narcissistic initially. You might have simply thought that your boss was exacting or demanding or perfectionistic. Some of you may have even gone so far as to think this was an opportunity to learn from someone, especially if your boss was some kind of hotshot or really, really good in what they did. You may have had a strong work ethic or simply be smart and good at your job, but you may have also been very ambitious and seeking something more. Some of you may have detected that your boss was narcissistic, but also believed that working hard will get you ahead, or that someone would take notice of it, and there would be an opportunity to grow within the organization. All very reasonable things to expect. So the selfishness of the narcissistic boss, like with any narcissistic person, it knows no bounds. And so here is how it often goes down. If you're really good at what you do, a narcissistic boss doesn't want to lose you. You are making their life too easy. You may be doing your job uncomplainingly, keeping your eye on the prize, believing that if you do well that you will be advanced. Because they are narcissistic, they have zero interest in your growth or your potential. They only know that with you around, and they feel entitled to you being around, by the way, that it's better for them. And the narcissistic boss may also be so distorted in their self-appraisal that they think that they are the great one, and not that things are running smoothly because of you. Heaven forbid someone else get the credit for how things are going. But at some inherent level, they do know that they need you, and they are not going to let you go. Much like a narcissistic parent who feels entitled to their child doing what they want and almost believing that their child owes them something, and that for a lifetime that child should be meeting or anticipating their needs, and the child, and even into adulthood, is labeled as selfish or greedy or ungrateful for wanting to be their own person. Something similar happens with the narcissistic boss. The narcissistic boss feels entitled to you as well, and that pattern of subjugation shows up in the same way in parenting relationship as it does in a work relationship. With a narcissistic boss, you exist for them, for their career, and they will label you as selfish. Or if you try to get ahead in your career, that you're getting ahead for yourself. And how dare you try to strive for more. So this takes us to this whole future frozen part. And this is actually pretty effed up. The narcissistic boss, supervisor, mentor, whoever they are, will actually hold you back. They may tell you that you are not ready to advance, even though you are. And they may future fake you and tell you that the team just needs to get past some made-up deadline or benchmark, and then you can talk about it. They may lie to you and tell you that there are no advancement opportunities opening up anytime soon. What they're doing to you may even be more severe. and they may even actively stop your opportunities to get advanced. For example, you may actually attempt to network and be proactive in the workplace, and they will get the word out to stop that somehow. They may imply that you're being ungrateful, selfish, or even showing hubris at wanting to advance. So if you have even an ounce of imposter syndrome, it will play on that. The narcissistic boss who's future freezing you may also take the future faking to a cruel level and lie to you about how they're going to talk to other people in the organization to ensure that the right people know about you, but they never do. And the final insult in all of this is that they may actually try and block you when you try to leave the position and seek out a new one. And you may actually not have the kind of letter of reference you deserve because they won't give it to you, or you have to do your new job search secretly. And if it's a small industry, this can be very tricky because someone is very likely to talk and say how you are looking for a job, and it'll probably get back to your narcissistic boss who is trying to freeze you and keep you with them forever. As all of this happens, you are future frozen. And it's important you be aware of this dynamic, because you could end up stuck in it for a very long time and may miss real opportunities to advance in a timely manner. I personally, with a couple of narcissistic bosses, have almost gotten future frozen twice. And the people who remained in the job, interestingly, are still future frozen. However, I've also experienced the alternative, a job in which the folks around me and who were my bosses were really good people who told me, you can be bigger than this. We love you, but it's time for you to get a PhD and go on to the next level. So the question becomes, how do you avoid being future frozen? First, you have to know what narcissism is, how it shows up in the workplace, and that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you know the rest. You need to ask for ongoing performance reviews so you have evidence of your performance, and save records of any work product you create, and that's all those kinds of things, whatever that looks like in your industry. You also need to do your homework on what has happened to people who have worked with this person before. Are they still there after years and kinds of languishing? Did they move on, and what did that look like for them? Make some tentative inquiries and ask about what happened to the people who came before you. But do this carefully so it doesn't get back to the narcissistic boss. You need to find a genuinely supportive, non-narcissistic mentor separate from the narcissistic boss. Ask them how long one should stay at your level and get some guidance from them on what advancement should look like. As with any narcissistic relationship, bosses are no different. You need to radically accept and recognize that if you have a future freezer boss, they will not make it easy for you to leave. And if you have a history of other narcissistic relationships in your life, especially narcissistic parents, the boss's manipulations and telling you things like how you're selfish or ungrateful for leaving the job may bring up uncomfortable feelings of guilt and shame. It's important that you also make some quiet inquiries about other jobs. Perhaps in some cases, you may even consider going off on your own and starting something entrepreneurial. But keep it all under your hat, because as soon as the narcissistic boss hears about it, they are going to try and shut it down. And if you try to distance yourself and go off and be your own person in the workplace, you got to be prepared for smear campaign type stuff, or at the very least, that the narcissistic boss may foster and share a skewed narrative about you. Don't get into the mud and just keep working the way you are. Just document the hell out of everything. In these situations, don't get tempted by a hoover. For example, your narcissistic boss offering a significant pay raise or the promise of a better title or the like. It is still going to keep you in the subjugated space, and it will always be about them. And unless you are comfortable with being the professional equivalent of your narcissistic boss's butler for the rest of your career, don't fall for it. Whatever they're dangling in front of you, including money, may be very tempting. But the individuation, autonomy, and pursuing a career path that isn't about making them look good is even more valuable, because it'll allow you to develop in an authentic manner professionally, and you can't put a price on that. And remember, you are probably why the narcissistic boss looks so good to the world. There is some schadenfreude in watching them hanging out there once you leave the job and them trying to figure it out without you, because it becomes very, very, very apparent very quickly at how much of their success was happening and it was being grown on your back, even though you weren't being recognized. I am sure some of you have seen the film The Devil Wears Prada. And in that film, there is the assistant who endures a difficult year or so of working for the very narcissistic boss, with the assumption that you do a certain amount of 1 or 2 years in this job and you go on to advance. But even in the films, it seemed like none of the assistants advanced. I guess maybe the big dangle was that they got to go to Paris Fashion Week just to be further subjugated. But the fiction of the film became clear when the highly competent, get anything done for this boss assistant, Andy, decides that she's had it. And she tosses her phone in a fountain and blows her narcissistic boss off in Paris. And she gets back to New York, looks for a new job, and finds out that the narcissistic boss has reached out to the new employer that Andy has gotten a job at, or is interviewing at, I should say, and has given Andy a glowing reference. That's the sort of fiction that messes people's heads up in narcissistic workplace situations, because that is not how that story goes down. Hollywood always wants to give the narcissist a happy ending, probably because there are so many narcissistic folks in that industry, and they want redemption. But I have known people who have been in 20 to 30 year future frozen careers, and it's terrible to witness. Smart, diligent, hardworking people who could have developed out their interests in so many different ways and had so much more freedom if they weren't under the thumb of a narcissistic person who has frozen them into eternal obligation with fake promises, and the job isn't even pleasant while they're doing it. If your hard work is making the trains run on time, but it's not being recognized through growth and respect in the workplace, real respect, not nonsense about, wow, you're such a good team member, here's a certificate, not that. Or is being recognized through appropriate advancement opportunities. If that's not happening, take a long, hard look around and how you are being kept stuck simply because you are making someone else's life easier. And remember, how would the end of The Devil Wears Prada have gone if it was really a movie about real life? The narcissistic boss would have been vindictive and made sure that Andy didn't find a job for a while. That's the real world. How when this is happening in your real job, it can take a significant toll on your future and on your mental health and leave you future frozen. Thanks again.